Blake, welcome to the Cape Coral Investor Network. As you know, when it comes to doing real estate investment here in Southwest Florida, a key component is understanding the landscape when it comes to your insurance. And who better to talk about insurance for your rental property than the president of State Insurance, Blake Chapman. Blake, how are you doing today?
Hey, doing great, Alvin. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. I can't wait to dialogue a little bit and doing great. Fantastic. It's just the start of the summer, so things are starting to heat up for sure for us, and not just the weather, but things are going well. Just tiptoed into hurricane season. So as you can imagine, things are real exciting on the insurance front right now, for sure.
Yeah, as if 2020 wasn't crazy enough, there's obviously a lot of news happening in 2021, particularly, well, I'll let you go ahead and describe it. What's happening when it comes to insurance in 2021? What should owners be anticipating, and what are we looking for as the rest of the year wraps up?
Yeah, no, that's great for sure. I'd say the pandemic, specifically on the property insurance side didn't change it much, from its direct effect on there, but it did put pressure probably on more of the global markets, the reinsurance markets, just because those were kind of have disruption in them. But I would say, the one thing in Florida is going to be just with the catastrophes over the last, I would say 3 or 4 years have really pressured the market. So, I think the pandemic maybe added a little bit to that, a little bit more claims with people being home a lot more, right? Put it that way. And, I would say, a lot more people were cooking at home. So a couple more fires, things of that nature. But I would say from like the biggest thing that I would say changed, and a lot of people think it's the pandemic, is just that we had 3 or 4 very active hurricane seasons prior to the pandemic. And so that can be a little bit confusing and think, hey, did this really affect the insurance industry in Florida as well? And the answer would be no, but all those hurricanes 3 or 4 years prior definitely did. So that's what we're having to debunk that myth a lot right now.
And it's funny because having staged for all those hurricanes, the hurricanes themselves weren't that scary or anything insignificant. I remember living in New Jersey and I found Hurricane Sandy to be way worse than any hurricane we experienced in the last 10 years here. But there was an increase of companies basically going to people's houses and basically asking them to file claims and whatever damage they had on behalf of their companies to do the repair for their roof. How has that landscape impacted the insurance market?
Substantially, not for the better, for sure. So a lot of higher, because of the hurricanes and things of that nature, litigation on claims has dramatically increased. I think I saw some statistics that, when you look at all the claims in the nation, so this is the whole United States, 78% of them, or somewhere in there, 75%, 78% of them have as far as litigation attached to them in Florida. So we have 75% of the claims that are in the nation that have a lawsuit attached to them. So, which is crazy when you think of the whole nation. Florida's got 75% that would have a lawsuit attached to them. So what does that do? That dramatically increases the cost when you think of hiring attorneys on both sides and things of that nature. That's going to increase the cost. And that's going to restructure just the pricing across the board when it comes to homeowners insurance and property insurance. And so those things are being dramatically affected right now because of that.
So obviously there's a lot of spotlight on insurance and there's a lot of efforts being made currently to try to mitigate some of the risk or mitigate some of the increase in costs associated with homeowners and just owners in general. What are some of the things that we're looking at in the 2021 legislative sessions here in Florida?
So they were looking at several different things to kind of curve that, and I would say a lot of them didn't pass. Some things did, but a majority of them, from what I'm getting the rundowns, didn't pass. So, I would say, what's that mean for the industry as a whole? They were looking for ways to kind of curve just some fraudulent stuff, as far as multipliers on attorney fees that were one way. That's what they were looking to curve. But unfortunately, they were not successful in making some of those changes. So, I think in order to kind of make sure your policy is going to be eligible for renewal, or not being dropped, is it really to look in and see, hey, what are some of the things from an investment side? Hey, does it have a recent roof? Has it been updated in the last 10 years? That would probably be a really good thing to look at. Roofs are big. And then anything dealing with like plumbing systems, that's our other number one claim, is water damage related stuff. Just that there's been some appropriate updates or need anything that was ever needed, like a water heater. Once it ends its remaining useful life of about 15 years, probably a good thing to update, just so you can get the best pricing on insurance. But unfortunately, I mean, those are the couple things that I would say, just from a consumer standpoint or investor standpoint, that you really should do to get the best pricing, and best coverage on a home or property policy or landlord policy. That would be helpful. But yeah, I would say the legislative session recently, the only thing that really kind of did curve is some roof door knocking, whereas that it kind of made that more of illegal to say, hey, we'll give you $500 and we'll take care of your claim. They put a stop to that, and so that's going to be helpful. That will curve some of it. And they did change there is one other thing that was a plus. The statute of limitations, used to be able to file a hurricane claim 3 years later. And believe it or not, there was a lot filed on the 3-year anniversary of Irma. They did curve that back. I believe the year's 2 years now. So that should help. Those are things that, the one thing that, I always say that's important, even from an investor standpoint and from just an industry standpoint, is just consistency. And, I think those couple of things that did change will help with some of the consistency, because there was a lot of door knocking. Hey, we can get your free roof. We'll take care of everything for you. And when you look at a home, to me, that's probably the largest expense any investor or homeowner might have, is the cost of replacing a roof. Typically a water heater is not that expensive, or electrical panel, they're $1,500, $2,000, but on an average home. But roofs, hey, they can go from 20 to 100 depending on the home that you have, right? So probably the most costly thing that I've seen. So there's a couple things. So yeah, we were hoping for a little bit more productive legislative session from the insurance industry side, just to help mainly from the consumer side, for sure, because we're seeing dramatic rate increases, and would have loved to have seen that curved a little bit, but I think that's kind of the norm right now.
Yeah. State Insurance is our preferred vendor when it comes to homeowners insurance, renters insurance, anything insurance related. I usually just throw it to Josh, which is one of your key sales personnel, and he takes care of everything. I give him the address, give him the buyer's name, tell me, hey, we need a quote. And usually by the time we close, the buyers end up choosing to go with State Insurance because of price, but also because of a number of other things. I could go on for days as to why I recommend your company, but maybe it's more appropriate if the owner himself maybe highlights some of the benefits. So why choose State Insurance?
That's a great question, for sure. And I would say, Josh is a fantastic agent. He is the very best. He's a younger brother, so I got him scared. I think he thinks that, I'll beat him up if he doesn't do a great job. But no, he is by far one of the best agents in this region. And that's definitely can be seen for sure when working with him. But I would say one, the specialty side of it. I mean, we're really good when it comes to investor side. We understand that, hey, I want to make sure I'm accurately insured for a rental property or for my homeowner's policy. So that's number one. We're going to make sure coverage is correct and things of that nature. Cheapest, we try to stay away from that word. We like value, and say, hey, you're going to get the most competitive and the most valuable policy. And so we'll work with you to make sure that it's going to be highly competitive in the marketplace, which I think is number one. Is that you have a competitive and you have great coverage. So those are two things that we really strive for sure. But yeah, you're going to get that. And then, any questions, always available for questions. Or the other thing is we've at the expertise of, we have seen claims. I mean, we processed a ton of claims all the way from the Keys onward, all the way up to North Florida. through the last hurricanes. And so we've seen flood claims, we've seen home claims. And so I think that's important, right? It's like if you're going to go to a doctor, you better hope he's done the operation before. And so I think that's kind of the other thing. From an insurance side, you want to deal with an agent that actually has seen your possible claim, whether that's a fire, a hurricane, or a flood claim, which those can be a little bit rare. How did those play out? I think it's important. So I would say that's big, and there's a couple other things, in there as well, for sure. But yeah, those are the ones that stand out.
Yeah, as the owner of state insurance, you don't want to associate yourself as being cheap, but
Yeah.
I do have my clients shop out insurance a lot of times, and more often than not, you guys end up winning. Not only that, but being able to explain why you have this deductible, why this package makes sense, being able to give recommendations as to what the inspector should be looking for. Those are all key factors. Trying to maximize certain discounts that are available. Those are all wildly important. And Blake, you are very big. Insurance has a feel of being black and white as just being a line item expense, but you go out of your way to kind of create a more softer side to insurance. Can you walk us through what State Insurance Cares is and how that helps mold the culture of your organization?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think just to kind of add too on the competitive side, and like we usually will be probably the best rate. And one of the reasons is on that is just because we have a marketplace of products is the way we look at it. So lots of carriers, being an independent insurance agent, we say a marketplace for those products. So I think that's important. So when you have a lot of options at your disposal, you're going to get that rate wise. Yeah. And so, just to lead into what you're saying, yeah, the carriers being competitive, those are all things that are very important to the business aspect. And that's probably why we do write a lot of policies and, customer wise. But the one thing that kind of hit me in the heart literally was, hey, what's really different about you that, I can buy a progressive policy from you on my homeowners, or I can buy another carrier, Tower Hill Frontline Insurance policy from you. But what's different than you than the other agent down the street that might offer that same product? And that's where State Insurance Cares came around. And our number one core value is love. And we feel like that's it. And how we care for people is number one. So what do we, State Insurance Cares, what that is actually we take a portion of our thank yous from our customers every month, and actually twice a month, one in our Fort Myers office, one in our Stera, and we do a contribution back to a local nonprofit and to help them with whatever their need may be at the time. And so we do that on a monthly basis, and we call that State Insurance Cares. And we send that out to our customers, not mainly for a pat on the back, just to let them know about that organization, and maybe they'll be passionate and want to actually support it as an individual as well. And a lot of times what I find is that those organizations don't have a lot of, they don't spend any money on marketing and things of that nature. So that's where we feel like, hey, let's be a voice for you along with, I would say our customers. And so we say, hey, we're going to be a voice for you to our customers and our referral partners and things of that nature. And so, but that births State Insurance Cares. The other cool part about it is it's not just my heart and things that I'm passionate about. We've really taken that to the next level recently, and how it really started is we pull our team and say, hey, what are you guys passionate about? What are some organizations locally? And so we get the buy-in from that. And now we've actually taken that to another level. And there's a place on our website where our customers can tell us about an opportunity, maybe with a local nonprofit that we might not know, or our referral partners as well. So there's State Insurance Cares.
That's a perfect. I have an HR background, and I can tell you firsthand that when a company has more than just profitability, they tend to have their employees stay longer. They tend to be more passionate about the business, and it also creates more of a joyful situation. I think when you can retain your top talent, it really shows in the conversations and day-to-day interactions. So I would say, kudos and bravo, and I hope more business owners take your lead. As an awkward transition, I do want to ask for a lot of investors, insurance is a line item in which the thought process is often to have, the lowest expense imaginable. That often includes having the highest deductible and having absolutely nothing else added to the coverage. Here's a loaded question. What is standard homeowners insurance? And what are some of the additional add-ons that an investor should be considering when they're looking to rent out their properties as both a short-term and a long-term?
Yeah, no, that's great. A great question for sure. Loaded question, absolutely, for sure. But I would say standard homeowners is going to be what we would call a multi-peril policy in our world or whatnot, which either would be a HO3 or a DP3 for more on the investment side. And so multi-peril meaning what's covered? Well, everything except things that are specifically excluded in the policy. And so there's not many exclusions in there, but those can be go over a couple different things on that front. But typically that's an encompassing of anything that could happen. So I would say, what's typical coverage would be hurricane is a big one in Florida, right? For sure. Fire, liability.
Just to dive into hurricane, sorry to interrupt you. Is that specifically to the wind of the hurricane, of the water accumulation? What about the hurricane would not be covered under ordinary homeowners insurance?
So under a typical hurricane, so you get a hurricane loss where the roof were to come off, or a window were to open and water were to go in, then that would be all covered underneath a hurricane loss. So either the water damage, even the roof damage, or whatever happened because of the hurricane, as long as hurricane's a covered peril, then those things would be covered. The one thing on a homeowner's policy that is typically not covered is flooding. So rising water coming from an ocean storm surge. And so that would be a separate policy or added on by an endorsement, depending on the flood zone that the home might be in. But typically, hurricane's going to cover any wind damage, any tornado damage that's from a named hurricane is really what hurricane is, right? So if it's a named storm, that's when it would fall under the hurricane peril. We also sometimes gets confused as even though in Florida, we're tropical, so it doesn't necessarily have to be we've had some large losses from the tropical climate, is what I'm saying, from just tornadoes that will spun up in different areas of the state. Not during, it doesn't even have to be in hurricane season. That could be in January and February. And those would be covered under what's wind, the wind peril of wind. So, or whatnot. Same thing would apply. Any water damage that came from that event or anything like that would be in there. Absolutely. But yeah, of course, those would be subject to the deductible. But so, that would be standard homeowners insurance would be a special peril policy, multi-peril policy that would cover anything that's not specifically excluded, which that's very broad. I mean, that's very, covers a lot of different things. Typical exclusions are really relatively small, but can be reviewed. But they're very, very, there's not many of them, put it that way. Very comprehensive coverage. Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's say an investor purchased a property, maybe 10 or 15 years old. What are some of the common ways that investor could reduce their homeowners insurance?
Yeah, great. So something in the 10 to 15 year range would still in the insurance world relatively newer. So which would be good, from rate wise and things of that nature. I would say a wind mitigation inspection could be helpful. A majority of those credits will automatically apply on anything that's 2002 and newer. But if it gets a little bit older than 14, 15 years, that's when you would want to be looking at the water heater, because that could be more of an eligibility on a home that's over 14, 15 years old for sure. But a roof age, if it's shingle, that's where you need to start to not that a lot of those don't have a remaining useful life. That would probably be more to 20 to 25 years. It's just insurance companies at the moment, and probably for the future, for a little while, are very, very cautious on anything roof wise that's over 10 to 15 years for sure.
Yeah, I recently bought a property that has a roof about 20 years. And I'm able to get insurance. It is a bit higher, but I definitely have to plan to replace it next year, right?
Yeah.
Because one of the big fears, and this is a common discussion, is being dropped for insurance or not being able to renew your insurance. Blake, can you walk us through the difference between the two?
Yeah. So, I would say, so being dropped, or whatnot from a carrier. So sometimes those can come in a special order that goes through the Office of Insurance Regulation, where they'll send out like a 45-day cancel. Now, the nice thing about most Florida policies, they're through the admitted market. So what does that mean in a nutshell? That means that they all their policies and their forms go through an approval process through the state of Florida. So those are actually all backed up to a certain amount too through the state of Florida if it's an approved market. And so that can be really helpful for sure. So sometimes being dropped could be from anything dealing with the home that's not up to par, or whatnot, an older water heater, things of that nature. Would be typically what you consider dropped. I would say non-renewed and dropped, we would really consider those the two kind of the same thing. The only real difference in those is sometimes you can be non-renewed for nothing of really other than, hey, you're in an area where we're the carrier is going to be limiting exposure. And so, hey, your home might be perfectly fine and it was built in 2017 and things look great, but the carrier is limiting their exposure. So they're going to non-renew because they have too much exposure in that area, or they just don't like the way it models from a reinsurance side. They'll not renew that. So that would be probably the difference. I'd consider more dropping. They don't like some of the aspects of the risk being, hey, your roof just hit 20 years old. But typically those still come in the form of what would be considered a non-renewal. The other thing is, I would say that's out there is a lot of times you can get a policy, but all carriers do what they call is like a 90-day underwriting period. And so, that's early on, they do a 90-day underwriting period, and that's when they can get off the risk at any time during that period of time with a 20-day cancel. So got to be careful. Sometimes, you want to know those couple things up front and ask those questions and make sure, because the carriers these days will do an inspection on the property if it's a little bit older and verify all those things, the water heater, the roof. And so they could drop you potentially if it didn't meet all their underwriting guidelines at the time. So something to watch out there.
At Cape Coral Investor Network, we often recommend buying new construction at a term called build to rent, which is basically you have a builder build a brand new construction. Often they build it as a spec build, means that they cover all the financing expenses. And then you just provide the end loan to purchase a brand new construction property and put a tenant in there. One of the things that we notice is that the insurance rate tends to be a lot lower for these brand new constructions versus some of these resale homes. Blake, can you walk us through why some of these new construction homes have insurance rates so much lower than homes that are just a few years old?
Yeah, that's a great question, and there's a good answer for that. Probably the biggest thing is just all the current codes, the new codes that are built to would be probably number one. Is that, and it's a new home, that what's the likelihood of a loss on a new water heater, a new plumbing system, a fire on a new electrical system is, with all the new codes on all those systems. And then the other major thing would be the reinsurance cost. This is going to be something that's not easy to be seen, but the carrier always will buy reinsurance for a catastrophe like a hurricane. And so that's going to be substantially less because the probability that that home has a hurricane loss, because of all the new codes and the new roof guidelines that they have to follow, is going to be substantially lower. Right. So that would be, I would say those two things combined, would be probably the biggest thing. All your major systems are new where we see losses, and then the reinsurance cost is going to be substantially lower because the probability of a hurricane loss with a home built to the current codes is going to be way lower. So, yeah.
Blake, you're pretty rare specimen. You actually grew up in Southwest Florida, which is very odd. So you also went to FGCU. A lot of times when I work with out-of-state investors, they don't know kind of the feel. They just look at it from Google Maps. It's clearly the numbers make sense from an investment perspective, but they don't know what the culture is like here. They don't know what it's like to raise a family here. Since you've had that experience, what's it like growing up in Southwest Florida?
Well, it's been a blessing, I would say. You don't know what you don't know, I guess, for sure. We've traveled around, but it seems like we're anchored here, I guess. Maybe it's the ocean. I don't know, but it is definitely a great place to live, grow a family, work, do business, and actually relax occasionally, or build just strong relationships. And it's the communities are strong, I would say, for sure. And a lot of transplants, a lot of people come from different places, so that gives you a really good mix. And I think that's always good when it comes to building relationships for long term. So yeah, I'd say it only gets better, grows on you a little bit, I guess.
I always joke that one of the downsides of living here is it makes it very difficult to go vacation somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
Because you'll go to the Caribbean and you'll see their beaches, and it's exact like our beaches are better. Plus, I found parking right away. Plus, I come home the same night, sleep in my own bed. It's a real big challenge. The one last question that I have for you is, for some reason, there's a constant fear of alligators. Have you or anyone you know gotten bitten by an alligator?
Nobody that I've known personally. Have I heard of a family member or something like that? Yeah, but it's very, very rare. And the one thing I would say, watch out for the big ones. For sure.
Wait. Did you just admit, I was hoping for the opposite answer. Did you just admit that someone you know has gotten bit by an alligator?
Well, you can't live in Florida for 4 decades and think that it isn't going to happen. But it is. Yeah, it's extremely rare. Even sightings are extremely rare. And I would say that's going to happen in a lot more rural area, and more on the countryside for sure. But yeah, I would say growing up, very rarely did you see any. I would say maybe the sharks in the water are probably the biggest thing to watch out for, more than alligators for sure, and the stingrays, right? But those are still rare as well. Beaches are beautiful, sandy bottoms, so yeah, it's still rare. But watch out for the big ones. But most gators, they're not that large for sure. So that I see. Put it that way. Not in town. Put it that way.
Yep. Well, Blake, thank you so much for your time. There will be links on the bottom how to connect with Josh, and there'll also be a link to get more information about your website or anything else. You're always available, so I'll be sure you'll be happy to receive a million questions now. But thank you so much for your time. I look forward to doing it again. If you want to say bye, now's the time.
Hey, see you guys later. Anything I can help out with, I'm always here for sure. Thanks so much, Alvin. Been great.
All right.